Good afternoon and welcome everyone. It's my pleasure to host you in the first kickoff event of the Industry Knowledge Exchange Forum, hosted by SAP in collaboration with IPA, with Network 18 as a media partner. We started the Industry Knowledge Exchange Forum for Life Sciences and Pharma last year, and we had some compelling events last year, some of the highlights of which I will share with you now. So this year we have a full-fledged calendar for rest of the year. That is also something that I will take you through. And I will conclude with a brief introduction to how today is going to look like. And then you will be treated to some great insights from industry leaders, which is essentially the purpose of holding this knowledge exchange forum. So what is this about? This is something that we designed last year, keeping the industry in mind, keeping the advancement of industry in mind, how to best exchange ideas, knowledge with the sole purpose of advancing the industry much, much farther from where it is today. We will get contribution from industry leaders, consulting partners, and SAP will act as the technology lead in providing insights on where technology can actually take the industry. So this is a great collaborative event. We cannot make this complete without your participation as well. So as you listen through the panel discussion, we really encourage you to come up with questions. Last year, we did 3 events under the theme of serviceability, essentially to get the right products at the right site at the right time with the right quality. So we concentrated on 3 key topics last year on manufacturing, supply chain, and quality. And we had some great insights with participation from industry leaders spanning multiple companies. I don't want to name each of them for the fear of probably missing out one or two. We had BCG as our consulting partner, and as always, IPA was our guiding light, essentially showing the direction in which we should focus our efforts to help the industry move forward. So very briefly, some of the insights that we got in the manufacturing event, which was hosted, I think, in October of last year, the importance of doing small projects, which are true digital innovations, yet at the same time, those that yield quick results, so that there is significant belief that innovations and transformations are not necessarily drawn out for long periods of time, that people cannot see the fruits of their labor. So we came up with a few ideas, and some of which have been executed by clients. Some of the key highlights in that space I would like to call out are how to improve yield, how to ensure that people are better enabled to use technology within the line function, so that they really don't have to rely on reports, but they can collaborate with the larger team. How to make people more self-reliant in the usage of technology for the purpose of analytics, so that the field can be advanced seamlessly. When it comes to supply chain, which is, of course, a critical component of ensuring serviceability, we talked about the importance of ensuring that planning is not static. Planning is very dynamic, be it on the demand side or on the supply side. How critical demand sensing has become, how critical it is important to be having visibility between central planning and detailed planning and scheduling at the plant level. How there is real-time visibility across the value chain, so that any disturbances or any impairment can adequately be balanced, so that the supply chain doesn't take a hit. So this was a great learning for all of us. And of course, nothing ends in this industry without talking about quality. We spoke about quality, especially with reference to some of the recommendations that came from the Drug Shortage Task Force, which was initiated by the US government. The report came out in the early part of last year. But a lot of the recommendations that have come from them are applicable not just in quality, but in the entire development life cycle, right from product development through manufacturing through execution. So these were some key insights, and I have called out the links for the recordings from these sessions at the bottom, and we can make this available to you so that you can also go and listen to those and get a flavor for how we started this whole knowledge exchange forum. Going forward this year, we have a very esteemed panel that will follow this address and the keynote address. Essentially, the panel is going to be talking about what were the learnings that we had last year and how those learnings can be taken forward next year, that is this year, so that the momentum which was initiated last year is not lost, and how the transformation agenda actually is accelerating rather than coming up with any kinds of further impediments which kind of destabilizes the progress that was made last year. We have a bunch of events that are planned for subsequent months. We would finalize the dates at least about 2 to 3 weeks in advance of the event. So very soon we should have the date confirmed for the event in May. But if you see, the topics are pretty diverse, but all relevant to the industry in India. Some may be very focused to domestic business, but some may be applicable to businesses across the world. And you will get to hear a lot about these topics as they get introduced as part of the panel discussion today. Shortly after I finish, we are fortunate to have Mr. Shirish Belapure from the IPA provide the keynote for today's event. So I pass on the baton to him. And once we hear his insights, we have a very interesting panel which will talk about the importance of these topics that we just showed you in the agenda for the rest of the year. So once again, welcome to everyone. Please ask a lot of questions. Do get involved and be part of the community, not for just this event, but for all our events going forward. So thank you. And Mr. Shirish, the floor is yours now.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, organizers, for giving me an opportunity to present this address to you. I think let me start with I think everybody is talking about the COVID-19 and issues related to this. COVID-19 is first and foremost a humanitarian challenge. Thousands of health professionals are historically battling the virus, putting their own lives at the risk. And I think government, industry, everybody has done this for the last 1.5 years. We thought that it is getting over, but again, it has really started. Now, this COVID-19 has some unique challenges which were thrown to the industry. And I would like to talk about those challenges, what has happened and what we can do further on this. I think one of the important challenge which was there during COVID-19 was the demand variability. I think we used to have the changes in the demand, sometime hydroxychloroquine, sometime dexamethasone, somebody will ask for remdesivir, somebody will ask for the firavipir. So, and it was changing from time to time. And that was one of the major challenges faced by the pharma industry. Second important was the supply chain disruption. Supply chain disruptions were at various levels: international border, national borders, state borders, town borders. Everywhere there were issues related to this in supply chain disruptions. And we have to ensure that employees can cross the boundaries and go to their workplace. Trucks have to move. The major challenge was also onto the raw materials, packaging materials, and ancillary materials also, because they were not declared as the important industry for this purpose. Third thing was the unpredictability in the workforce availability. I think everybody must have seen what workforce was available. Sometimes they were there, sometimes 3-4 cases comes, everybody is out. So there was unpredictability in the workforce availability. Also, those people who were coming were SMEs, mainly subject matter experts. So the operators will do only filling machine or only compression machines, or analysts will do only particular type of analysis. And that was a big issue because we need to have the multi-skilled people, so that whoever comes, we can use him for that purpose. So that was one of the issue. Third casualty of this COVID-19 was the inter-departmental transparency and coordination, because most of the people went into the work from home, particularly the quality assurance people, and they have to take the decision. So there was no transparency and coordination initially, and that was the major challenge faced by us. It naturally resulted into the delayed decision making also. That was one of the other factors which concerned into this. Last thing in this is the medicines. I think most of the government started that we must have the medicine from their local things and not from outside. So that was another challenge which was faced by all of us. I think what were the learnings from this COVID-19? And it continues to learn. We have to continue to learn, because still it is not over. I think if you have capacities, we can continue to ensure supply. With the changes in the demand also, we could supply the goods to the market without any real shortages. That is because we had built up the capacities over the period. Entire pharma industry has done this, and that's why we could continue the supplies. Second thing also, we learned that with less workforce, we can manage, we can have the efficient production. Less number of people, but still the production levels were up. So I think that was another area we learned how to utilize the workforce. We also learned a very effective tool for the effective management, that is remote working. We have learned now that some of the people may not go to the office in their next work life, except they want to go for a day or so, that's different. But otherwise, they don't have to go. Regulatory people can definitely work from the home. Some of the quality assurance people, documentation people can definitely work from the home. Some of the seniors also can work from the home. So that's what we learned from this COVID-19. Adaptation and reorganization was happening every time to ensure that the supplies are made, changes are taken place, and we get adapted to this. Another important thing is the quality culture, who were having the proper quality culture. I think it was very clear that we don't have to do the monitoring. So less monitoring was required in case of the companies which were having the proper quality culture. The biggest flip side or the biggest boon of the COVID is the investment in automation and digitalization. I think we were pushing it for last 5 to 6 years, but companies were not so aggressive. They were saying we'll take its own time. We have got adequate people. Invest in automation when the same jobs can be done by the people. But last year changed the entire scenario, and people started thinking very differently than this. And lot of investment in automation, digitalization has taken place. And most of the big companies are thinking in that direction, that we need to do some automation and digitalization. Some plants, I was told, one of the plant has become completely paperless as well as touchless. So that's another big advantage. And that's what is going to take us forward. And I think probably we are going to discuss this in detail today. What are the priorities now for us? I think first is the multi-skilled workforce, which is necessary. Remote working model will continue for the next how many years, I don't know. But that will also, effectiveness will be better over there. Automation knowledge will ensure less disruption in our working. And another important thing which I talked about is digital and analytics, DNA, which will enhance the productivity across our value chain. That's sure. I think role of digital analytics, there are some examples. Like for example, augmented reality can be used for the remote supervision. Artificial intelligence can be used for the asset capacity optimization. Digital twin can be used for scheduling and performance management. There are multiple examples, like the machine learning can be used for the predictive maintenance, all those things. So there are multiple advantages of getting into the digital and analytics. That is very clear. If you really see, over the last few years, we have set up several foundational elements to drive digitalization and automation. I think Most of our equipments have the sensors to capture process and environmental data. So sensors on the equipment is the first stage which we are talking about. Then there are operator and technology layer, like the recording and storage of operation data, like SCADA, remote viewer, historians, SQL, DB, PLC, HMI, SCADA, DCS. All these are the operating technologies which are there. On that, there is an IT layer which talks about IT applications to capture data across the function areas and use it for the analysis and taking the decision. Like ERP, I think, for example, SAP is also part of that. E-Track, LIMS, TrackWise, MES, manufacturing execution systems, local applications like BMS, EHS, EMS, etc. And on top, there is a data layer, enterprise-wise integration of data lake and data warehouse for really taking the decision. That's what we now need to do. That's what we want to go forward to. And whatever we have done so far, these foundation stones, what we have done, they have definitely given some early wins for us. Like advanced analytical driven supply robustness has given us, I think I'm giving the example of one of the company, pharma company, which has done this. I can't name this, but I can tell you. They have got almost 50% improvement in supply and reliability outcomes across the network. Automated data logging and reporting has resulted into 30% reduction of manual entries by elimination of paper-based processes and avoiding the issues related to the data integrity. Digital boardroom for organization-wide transparencies have helped for granular visibility of holistic KPIs across levels in the organization. And advanced analyticals led reduction of investigation, particularly OS and other things. With these advanced analytics in the manufacturing and the quality control have reduced invalid OS percentage to almost 35% plus. So I think that's a big achievement. But that's not the end. We have to go forward. Our aspirations is going forward is even more bold, and we need to do a lot of things. I think one of the things which we need to talk about is create touchless factories, or we call them as lights out factories, by rewiring our plant operations, upgrading technology, and reducing operator analyst dependence. Second thing is enable data-driven decision making and performance enhancement through rapid deployment of Industry 4 use cases. This will also help us. Build a digitally native organization with at-scale DNA talent and capabilities. That is, upgrade existing roles and add new capabilities. So, digitally native organization, what we are talking about. Next is achieve top quartile performance in operations on performance outcomes, quality, cost, productivity, and service levels, while also ensuring environmental sustainability. These are our aspirations. And I think these aspirations are fine and we can achieve this because there are some good examples in the Western world which they have already done this. Completely digitalized plant. There are examples from the Eli Lilly, from Indianapolis, Pfizer. And then there are some companies like I think GSK and other thing also achieved this thing. So it's not difficult. We need to give the importance to this and work on this. That's very important. This from our journey so far, there are some learnings. It is not without learning again. I think first is aspiration must be big and bold. We need to have not incremental, but a complete digitalization and automation, and beyond incremental. That's what is very important. We don't have to wait for the greenfield facility to start this work. Real value can be unlocked using existing facilities. If you can do this in the existing facilities, that will tell you what needs to be done, and then it can be applied to the greenfield facilities also. Many times people think that it can be done only in greenfield facilities. Not true. Our existing equipment are ready. We need to do little modification, but they can go for the complete digitalization. We need to have a strong value-backed view to any investment and initiative. I think there is a trap otherwise. For investing for the sake of technology is not the right thing. Technology for what is the output or what things we are looking forward it should give, not just for technology. We need to have the dedicated teams to drive and sustain such a large-scale efforts. We also need to have onboarding of new skills, also on the reskilling of existing workforce. True transformation can only happen through a combination of both. And as you know, there will be always some people who are critics or who will not be directly coming on this side. But I think it is necessary and critical to take them along. I think one of the important thing which I would like to tell you here is, in addition to whatever we are doing in digitalization, I think there is big thing which we need to create in the digitalization, the cyber safety requirement. There are many cases, even in India, the two pharma companies were impacted big way by the cyber security threat. And in internationally, there are many examples, starting from Merck. So I think we need to, when we are building up the digitalization platforms, we should take the adequate care so that cyber security threats are taken care of and we don't land that into another trap. That's very important. I'm sure there are so many experts now are here who are going to deliberate on the various methods of the digitalization and Industry 4. So I leave it to them now. Thank you very much. And thank you once again. Thank you. Bye.
So, Shirish, thank you so much for the insight. I'm glad you touched upon this in a very methodical way. You talked about what has changed, how demand and supply, the way we look at demand and supply is not the same anymore. So without further ado, I pass it on to Ekta, who is the host for today's panel discussion. She will bring on the panel and take it from there. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Rajesh. Well, we have a whole list of panelists joining in, an extremely esteemed list of panelists this afternoon with us. So let's get going. Good afternoon, everyone. Today's discussion, in fact, is not just about pharmaceuticals and technology, but also on the overall concept of thought leadership in the industry. The biggest talking point now for more than a year has been the COVID-19 pandemic. And at the epicenter of the COVID-19 crisis are healthcare organizations. Healthcare companies are not only battling to save lives, control infection rates, but also protecting their frontline staff. Against this backdrop, the pharma industry's ongoing efforts on vaccines and inventing and repurposing existing drugs to battle the virus has been under intense scrutiny. On the other hand, one doesn't talk about the impact COVID-19 has on the regular day-to-day operations of the pharma industry, which is an essential service. With so much time and resources being allocated to the pandemic, every aspect of the pharma value chain, from manufacturing to sales and marketing, is having to adapt to the new digital reality with their product and consulting partners. In fact, the reality is that working practices across the industry may never be the same again. Well, before I introduce the panelists, I just want to remind the audience to ask questions in the chat window. Well, let's get to our esteemed panel then. First up, we have Ms. Ghosh, who is the Industry Business Architect Team Lead, Industry and Customer Advisory Practice, SAP India. She has over 18 years of experience in the IT industry as a business process and technology strategy consultant. Mr. Joydeep Ghosh, who is a senior partner at Deloitte. He specializes in supply chain manufacturing and logistics solution consulting. S. Ramesh, Executive Director, Global CFO and Head Corporate Affairs, Lupin, with over 2 decades of experience in leadership positions in the finance domain. He's also commenced his second stint at Lupin about a couple of months ago. Kedar Upadhyay, who is the Global CFO of Cipla. He provides leadership and strategic oversight to multi-locational finance teams operating throughout the globe. Mr. Prasad Deshpande, he's the Senior Vice President and Global Head Supply Chain Management, Biocon. He has 26 years of global and diversified experience in the field of supply chain management and contract manufacturing. Mr. Srinivas Rao, who's the Global Head of Supply Chain at Sun Pharma. He started his career from Unilever and has worked in factories and central supply chain for 16 years. And Mr. Subramaniam, who's the CFO at Aurobindo Pharma. He was promoted as CFO in July 2014, plays a significant role in the growth of the company when it comes to fundraising, M&A, corporate restructuring, etc. Welcome to the panel, everybody. Well, with that, we're going to start this discussion, and we do have an esteemed panel ahead of us to answer what the way ahead is. But, let's start in terms of setting the context first, and I'm going to throw the question to the CFOs first. Ramesh, let's start with you. We've heard a lot about the challenges which have been imposed upon the industry due to the lockdown and because of maybe some geopolitical compulsions as well. Reflecting back, what do you think the industry did well?
Well, I think firstly, this is the black swan event. When to that extent you're not necessarily prepared. But I think the way we responded with alacrity, with agility, and I think is what was very good for the industry itself. There have been several factors which are pretty disruptive to the industry. Firstly, in terms of at the factory place itself, you didn't have too many. You had issues with the manpower. When it came to supplies of raw materials, especially packing materials, you had an issue. Even though this was actually classified as an essential industry, we had issues in terms of imports from China. Because there was this nationalistic forward playing in some ways. It is also because of the fact that we had some border problems with China and the like. There was, of course, promoting to the doctors, which took a tumbling because essentially doctors were not seeing patients, and certainly they were not willing to look at or meet with medical representatives. We had issues with, in fact, logistics. So nobody really, whilst we have all heard about scenario planning, about multiple disruption planning, and all of that, it's not as though we are really prepared for the event. The fact that we were able to kind of react with alacrity, with agility, and respond and keep our supply chain going, the very fact that we're able to keep, despite the fact that it's actually supplying to several countries all over, we kept our customers ahead of us, and we were able to be on top of the supply chain itself. And that, I think, is a good thing, which actually worked very well for the industry.
Okay. Kedar, what about you? What do you think the industry did well in terms of the past 12 months?
I think many things went really well, in this pandemic. I think all of us learned in the sector how to deal with the crisis. And most important thing that you don't want to compromise upon is providing high quality medicines throughout all the patients globally in all the markets across the world that we continue to operate. So in my think the algorithm of getting people safely into our manufacturing locations, warehousing locations, depots, and ensuring that we work with the transporters during the lockdown protocols and making the products available throughout the world. In my view, I think hats off to all our colleagues in operations and across the functions who made it happen. And there have been very low number of complaints of product non-availability. So in my view, I think that's the first thing which happened well. Secondly, I think during this time, typically what any enterprise would do is to establish a rhythm of scenario planning, and all the integral components of running an enterprise in these times, which are with respect to cash, inventory planning, collections, working capital, connect with channel partners and customers. I think all those were planned methodically. It's not that we had an experience of dealing with this once in a maybe 1,000 years event, but I think we all came together. We mapped step by step, and all the processes were galvanized in a manner in which customers' needs were adhered to, channel partners' needs were considered and delivered, and most importantly, employees who are operating to some extent, at least in the office from home. I think ensuring an IT infrastructure, cyber security infrastructure, various applications in which everybody was able to connect with each other. I think several things which gone well. And in my view, this is a case study as to how to do an agile transformation in the quickest time. So that's one thing I would certainly look back with a lot of pride. One thing that probably could have done better is taking employees along in terms of ensuring the well-being, of how to operate from home. Because if you had heard, across the companies and corporate sector, there were issues about working late. Many employees necessarily would not have 3 BHK or 4 BHK residences, So I think dealing with older parents, kids, so I think maybe companies could have done to some extent little more facilitative role, but I think all of us learned it as the pandemic went by. Those are
Okay,
the things that I believe went well, and one thing that I mentioned, it could have gone well.
Okay, absolutely, Kedar. That point is taken. And your point about agile transformation in a short period of time, because everybody sort of got a jerk to wake up, to transform in a short period of time, and maybe, was thrown into the deep end of the sea as well. And either you float or you sink in such a scenario. But Mr. Subramaniam, what about you? What do you think the industry did well in the past 1 year? And what do you think the industry could have probably done differently?
See, while the pandemic caused many challenges, it actually gave an opportunity to the Indian pharma industry, right? The Indian pharma industry, at the end of the day, has emerged as a reliable supplier of the high quality, affordable medicines globally. That is one thing which has happened. Even today, also, we have supplied the vaccine more than 69 countries, etc. And some of the things which has happened very good in the last year is the government has come out with the PLI schemes. The whole value chain has been strengthened actually. So we started being self-reliant on the API. Everybody started focusing on API to ensure continuous supply of medicine. The dependency on China, people started thinking about it, and that's the reason why the government is also come out with a PLI scheme by which ensure seamless supply of medicine API or the key starting material, by which they came out with the PLI scheme. That is very good. And the second, one of the thing is also the stakeholders, they collaborated to save the humanity. The entire industry worked relentlessly to provide uninterrupted supply of medicine. Many companies have come out with the whatever the thing they can do it. They came out with the new medicines, etc., or come out with the increased supplies. Take for example hydrochloroquine or azithromycin, etc. So everybody started contributing whatever they can do. It has been done. But one thing which could have been done is what we could have envisaged is this problem really started by February 15th, and the first lockdown has been announced on March 24th. So we have not envisaged the gravity of the problem in the 40 days, by which if we had understood that, we could have planned further better actually.
Okay. Do you think that we're underestimating the gravity of the new wave then, Mr.
I think to some extent, we never thought, even though we read it in the, we have been reading it, Italy, there is a big problem. US, a lot of people have been dying or a lot of people getting infected. But still, we thought India will come out successful and we will not have that problem. Ultimately, we could have planned better.
Okay, we could have planned better. So that's the word coming in from Mr. Subramaniam. But I just want to throw this question to the supply chain heads as well. Mr. Deshpande, let's start with you. How do you think that the industry was probably supported by consulting partners, product companies in the past 12 months? How did they write the application?
So just I'll answer that question. One more I wanted to shed a light is Biocon is also into a big business of API. So when we talk about the industry suffered and the resilience was tested, I would say as an industry and as a company, we were at the forefront because of the API nature of our business. And as Mr. Sudarshan said, definitely we could have planned better. I think as a country, we are young generation, but so we are little impatient. So when the second wave is coming, I think our impatience is giving way to the second wave. Coming back to the consulting question, I think consulting industry has been very helpful in providing us the insights and the data. I would call it as how would we do, as Kedar said, the scenario planning. But I invite our consulting partners to be there for more, because we'll be even more data driven. We'll be more into what if scenarios, and where all the engines like the SAP engines, where the technology, or whereas the consulting partners have wealth of information and insights across the globe, and that will help us to chart the way forward.
Okay. All right. We'll just come back to you, Mr. Deshpande. But Mr. Rao, if we could get your thoughts on the same idea, how exactly was industry supported by consulting partners, by product companies in the past 12 months? What do you think was done correctly? What do you think should have been probably done differently?
So in my view, the industry in general has done fantastically well in terms of responding. And it's when I say the industry, I actually start from all the way from raw materials to API to finished product and the whole 9 yards. You know, I can give you an anecdotal example of what actually consulting partners did for supporting this. For example, in the European, medical supply of European medicines, actually there have been a consulting partner who actually brought in all the data across all the globe from all the companies which we were supplying, and they did a fantastic job of actually pooling all the materials from generics to brands to everything, and to be able to make sure that the patients are actually getting their medicines on time. Specifically on the chronic medicines, it was very important for patients to actually get their chronic medicines, and consulting partners actually helped a lot in terms of putting the data together, making scenarios in terms of if not this, if not that, and so on and so forth. Apart from that, they also actually helped some of the companies in terms of putting up alternate scenarios because of the airlines actually stopping the passenger flights, which were carrying almost 20 to 30% of our goods. All that was stopped, and they actually put up all those seaports into action, and they created some special lanes for us through the Government of India intervention, and got a good amount of help for us, both from a regulatory perspective as well as collating data and putting it together. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there was a streamlining in terms of operations. That's exactly what you thought the contribution was. But Joydeep, from a consulting partner perspective, what was your experience? Where do you think you probably faced the biggest hiccups? What do you think could have been done differently and probably more efficiently?
I would like to thank that the industry, as Srini has pointed out, and before that Prasad, Kedar, has done incredibly well in the face of deep challenges. Truth be told, this was new to every single one of us. We never planned for it. We didn't know how to deal with it. But we all put our heads and shoulders together to figure out what best could be done given the situation. So for the consulting sector, obviously our first and pretty much the first top 10 priorities remain the well-being and success of our clients. So we were very, very concerned when we found lots of disruptions due to infrastructure, due to flow of raw materials, or rather disruptions to flow of raw materials. So we tried obviously to make sure that we try to create an environment of protection in terms of finding out what kind of tools to use, what data to use, how to react faster, quicker, how to make sure that the impact or negative impact is as far as possible minimized. And in addition, also, if there would be a turnaround at the end of the proverbial tunnel of darkness, how to plan for an upsurge, how not to overcompensate. So those were probably the things we worked a lot on figuring out how to. We also found out a few other things which are worth mentioning. I guess all of us, I mean, as individuals and in the collective psyche of the industry, we discovered we were able to do many more things than we were willing to give ourselves credit for. So, I mean, whoever thought that, very large companies, 40,000 crore plus companies would run, 70% people working from home. Unthinkable. How the factories how quickly they would come back to normal, how much people are resilient and able to deal with all of these issues to come back to work as normal. Now you see, what is the outcome? The outcome, if you stand back and look at it, yes, everybody has suffered as it has gone through lots of difficult moments. But we have found out that, as I said, we are able to do many more things than we ever imagined we would at the end of 2019 even. Secondly, what we have found also is that we have found things about our weaknesses, like Prasad mentioned about the API story, and there are others who have worked on that. The government is also incentivizing that. Those are genuine strategic weaknesses we have been able to identify, unearth, address, and I'm sure with due action in these same lines, the companies and the government together will be able to mitigate that. I'll stop by mentioning one additional point. This again, our strategic advantage, if you look at in terms of the standing among global players, particularly in the geopolitical context, has been severely enhanced by this quote-unquote vaccine diplomacy, which we call it, which is obviously a great act of courage taken by many of our Indian entrepreneurs, taking heavy risks and heavy bets, and then our government taking the decision to ship out many of the vaccines where the need was most. This has given us a lot of strategic advantage in the international among the international players. So this is really a lot of, like, we have all of us have gone through a lot of trouble in the last year, and probably these troubles are not over as we see the second wave is coming back and hitting us. But we have got a lot of things we have found out. I mean, and this is the year probably we have learned to look more within and discovered our own strengths as companies and as individuals than we ourselves were willing to give ourselves credit for in 2019.
Okay, all right. That point is taken. So there has been a lot of introspection from a company as well as from a personal standpoint. But Ms. Ghosh, I wanted to ask you, as a product partner who's served, multiple industries globally, how did the experience help you serve the Indian pharmaceutical industry better? Tell us what exactly you did probably which was better during these tough times because of your learnings from other industries.
So one of the key things that, was where technology was first leveraged extensively was to ensure business continuity. And the next big area, which also Kedar referred to, was to ensure employee well-being. Now, pharma being a industry which is essential, the production had to continue. So ensuring employee well-being also needed the, being able to track employees on the shop floor to ensure their safety. So that was a completely different level of ensuring employee health, safety, and well-being on the shop floor, where technology actually leapfrogged a few years, right? Mm-hmm. The other big area was around just ensuring employee well-being as they were working from remote locations. So that was the first big area where we started working with a lot of customers, both in the pharma industry and across the other 25 industries that SAP actually works in. Second came the area of course, the supply chain uncertainty. So finding new sources of supply was the other big area. Now, this was not just like, for example, in the Indian pharmaceutical context, where to get source raw materials from, to onboard, to first of all discover new vendors, to onboard them based on their compliance. There again, a network-driven marketplace technology came to the rescue, and we were able to support a lot of customers in ensuring their production continued with minimal disruption. So that is the second big area. Taking this a little forward, not just from a pharma manufacturing perspective, but we also aided a lot of healthcare service providers in sourcing critical raw material. And where the supply lead times were very short, we were able to, whether from sourcing of raw material beds to sourcing masks and other other equipment such as PPE, again the same vendor network came to the rescue. So that was the second big area where we supported a lot of our customers. The third area was just to do better planning across the entire supply network. That was the third big area. And the fourth big area where we are working right now with a lot of governments and other vaccine manufacturing companies is to just ensure a collaborative way of tracing the vaccination process, whether it is in terms of the production, managing the stock, and the deployment process of this. We have a lot of, like, for example, the US FDA is actually the largest collaborator in this project. in just ensuring that the entire process is traced through technology. So these are 4 big areas that I would like to talk about. I would like to highlight in terms of how technology has helped this very critical industry in times of the pandemic.
Okay. So the 2 words which really came out to me or jumped out to me were, one, leapfrogging, as well as the agile transformation that we've seen. Mr. Ramesh, I just want to come to you on this. We are in the onset or in the midst of a second wave of COVID-19. Are you working in a complete smoothened supply chain without any disruptions at this point? This is as good as it can get for you or for the company?
Before I actually come to that question of yours, let me actually add about, in fact, in my view about consultancy contracts and the like. Of course, there were consultants who were willing to actually pitch in and help in on a lot of things. But actually, the internal teams also did, step up and do the job in terms of, identifying quite a few things. Firstly, they provided for visibility of the kind of problems that you're facing across the entire value chain. So unless you actually know a problem, you cannot actually address it itself. So you stepped up on meetings, you stepped up on the MIS reports that you were able to garner from various sources and tried to act on that. Second, of course, we all spoke about the fact that there was agility. If there's a problem that is visible to you, you went about trying to solve it as early as you can. And this could range from, in fact, supplier-led problems to manpower to employer-related issues and a host of other things. The third thing that we actually worked on was essentially on collaborating with each other. So we had cross-functional teams. We had all the seniors coming and meeting possibly every day, every week for sure. The cadence of the meetings were set up so that we were able to collaborate and immediately act upon the kind of issues that we are facing. And lastly, we also kept the communication up, the communication channels going for us. So essentially, when you speak about a problem and everybody thinks that there is a problem around, it's also important to note that we are in a position to kind of solve it. So all the communication channels are opened up, formal, informal, and we stepped up on that across various functions. We also had town hall meetings and the like to keep employees informed about what's happening around, because of course a lot of rumors that surface, and of course people are aware of the fact that issues are there at the factory level, at the supply chain level, at the various vendors and the like. So actually getting people communicating on all of that and making sure that the tone from the top was suggestive, the fact that we were fully in command was extremely important. So whilst of course there were companies which relied on consultants and the like, I think the internal teams also stepped up and did a grand job in terms of trying to tackle this. Coming to your question about, the second wave is indeed hitting us, but we have learned from the first, so to the extent it is in some ways going through what we have actually experienced before. So we're fully prepared in quite a few ways, but there's never a full preparation for this, because there could be problems of a different kind cropping up. But today, I think we have the benefit of a lot of stuff that we are experienced with, in terms of working from home, in the way we've addressed the issues on supply chain, the issues that you face on the manufacturing front and the like, and to that extent, we are fully prepared. The other thing that we need to add at this stage is the fact that digitization has been on in most companies for quite some time. Whilst so we might have began this journey quite some time ago, but it certainly got hastened after COVID really hit us. And we also realized that the pundits have been talking from the rooftop about the fact that data is the new oil, and we actually found that for ourselves, in terms of the way we were able to get a lot of data. And of course, these preparations have been on for quite some time. So we actually hastened efforts because we realized that technology could really do a lot of wonders for all of us. And that, I think, is keeping the momentum going even during the second wave.
Okay. All right. Mr. Subramaniam, what do you think is probably something that the industry probably still needs to improve on when it comes to the second wave? Is there something where there is an active change which is currently taking place as we speak? Maybe patient engagement, because the patient has come so close to the pharmaceutical companies, so close to healthcare companies, that you probably don't need middlemen anymore to engage with your customer.
Yeah, the first wave, what has led is it led to out-of-box thinking everywhere across the companies, across the industry. And especially now, given the lack of visibility in the future, the companies are vulnerable to work for the long term, and they have been doing multiple scenarios. and it makes the companies becoming more agile as well as prepared for the multiple scenarios. So decision making also has been part of the decision making has been decentralized at every level to meet the contingencies depending upon the particular location, particular units, etc. So also the short-term solutions and innovations, everything has been encouraged. As a whole, the industry has done the best which they could do in the challenging times. And digitalization is what really going forward. The digitalization is going to help the industry in a big way. So in the last 1 year, what we have learned is apart from the physical interaction with the doctors, etc., we were able to approach multiple tools, online consultancy, etc. We have been doing, and the digital developments will drive the value for the pharma companies mainly on 4 areas. One is the ability to deliver more personalized patient care. That's very important. Engage more fully with the physicians and patients. And third, we have been able to use the data to drive superior insight and decision making. And last is transform the business process to provide real-time responsiveness on various things. These are all really, if you really see in practical, take any example, if you really see, all these things are slowly in the last 1 year which has happened, which was not happening in the past, and it is going to improve in a big way in the coming years.
So has marketing changed as a whole, according to you? You know how MRs, they probably can't meet doctors as much because of mobility issues. So you're rethinking that entire aspect of pharmaceuticals marketing.
But certainly not going to be on every therapeutic segment, etc. But there are certain common therapeutic segments, etc. This is going to change, and people are becoming more wiser. And we have been started looking into the online applications by which we will be able to do self-medication. So for small problems, we are not going to get into the counsel doctors, etc. Unless it is a very serious one or a very, next level. So these are all going to change in the coming years, and companies have already experienced in the last 1 year. And already, I'm sure everybody must be thinking, why not we approach it in this way?
Okay. Mr. Deshpande, I just wanted to get your thoughts in. How do you think these cost savings that we're probably going to see in some form or manner, say it's more efficiency in the supply chain, say it's marketing costs, etc., how do you think these are probably going to be retained going forward? Because once the pandemic gets over, that will revert back to normal and these savings will not be contained.
So I think cost savings, we have to look at it more holistically. In fact, during the pandemic, because of the so there was a pandemic from China, but then there was another geopolitical situation from India and China. So the cost, in fact, went up. So pharma resiliency was tested from 2-3 perspective, as we discussed before. One is the supply to the patients, all the challenges, but on the cost side also, I have esteemed CFOs here who will agree to that. So pharma delivered under the tremendous cost pressure. Now going forward, as more we will overcome these challenges, I think the cost pressure will little bit ease. But from a long-term perspective, this is also learning for India as a country, and for the India being the pharmacy of the world. We concentrated more from a formulations perspective for the world, and we've been delivering billions of doses across the patients. But I think it is also time to get vertically integrated in the country, not in the particular company, where we'll not only have a long-term cost advantage, but we'll also have an accessibility for the medication, which largely hinges on China right now. So I think the cost has to be tackled from a multiple perspective. So like the government has done the PLI scheme and so forth, but I think we are we are not there yet from a critical mass perspective. What our competition as a country is, as a neighboring country is there. So we are still lagging there, and we have a long way to go. While we have optimized on the front end, which is the formulations and distribution to the markets, I think we need to develop the same ecosystem upstream of the pharma value chain.
Okay, so Mr. Rao, do you agree that API integration or maybe backward integration in terms of the supply chain is probably the need of the hour for the pharmaceutical industry, and that will probably prevent us from becoming larger on a global scale?
It indeed is a very important point. The government of India has also actually recognized it, and therefore they also announced this PLI scheme, and they are actually it's only incentivizing. Although there is no incentives needed, in my personal opinion, for the actual industry to go and do a backward integration. But because of the geopolitical situation, a lot of companies were already thinking the PLI scheme is only giving another push, and it will take it further ahead. I mean, I see no reason that it is not required. It is actually going to get a huge benefit. The whole industry will get a huge benefit of for the integration, the backward integration, I would call it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Kedar, what do you think? And what exactly has the industry done which has changed significantly according to you in the past 12 months? Yes, the PLI scheme is one part of it, but is there any sort of different procurements that you all are undertaking in order to hedge your supplies?
See, overall in the cost agenda, I think the industry has done a lot. And speaking from our own work, which we have done in Cipla, both the material costs, the SG&A, the selling costs, I think we have to reimagine our operating model to a great extent. Because activities in the markets is happening at the same speed which was there in pre-COVID. I think we are required to tune differently to deliver the same customer needs, the same needs for our patients, channel partners, and we are able to get into virtual bandwagon to a great extent. We in fact launched something called as Imagination Wave internally, and I'm quite proud with respect to the work which my colleagues did across the functions, and we find newer ways to engage our customers, channel partners, and patients. We are reaching them with the same intensity and with the same care, but through modalities which are much more agile and which are online. And in my view, our attempt will be to preserve a lot of efficiencies. And I'm quite sure these efficiencies will allow us to invest in areas for growth. They will allow us to invest in R&D, new lines of business, new geographies, orphan diseases, and deliver several new medicines to patients, across various therapies. So I think the answer is yes. I think these realities during these times allowed us to discover what is really discretionary cost and what is really some business. So many activities which we thought are required, we are realizing that probably either those are not required, or we could do those activities in a different manner and in a virtual reality. So I think the work done, to answer your question, Ekta, by the industry and by companies like us during these times has been phenomenal. We are operating with completely different paradigms, and I would urge that all of us should preserve these efficiencies to the great extent we can, and reach the customers, channel partners, and patients faster with lower cost, and allocate the capital towards newer lines of business, newer therapies, and orphan diseases and things like that.
Okay. Mr. Ghosh, what are you recommending for companies to scale up? How fast do you think backward integration needs to take place? How much have we progressed, say, from 12 months ago?
See, backward integration is not only from formulation to APIs, API to KSMs. This is not so easy to scale up infrastructure in the way, for example, China has their industrial parks. There are challenges to that even with the PLI scheme in place. As my esteemed colleagues here, the CFOs and supply chain heads have mentioned, they're in that journey, and they were in that journey probably even before. So it's not extremely new. As Ramesh pointed out, it has made the process faster. So people are obviously trying to get this backward integration, may not be, as Prasad pointed out very correctly, probably not within one company, but probably in the country as a whole. It is important. If you look at the reports, the API share of import has risen from something like 5% to 70% from 91 till 2018 or 19, around that time. So it's a very large dependence has increased. At the same time, many of the key APIs prices from the sources or the vendors in China have increased, some by 100%, 150%, 200%. So the need has been felt for quite a long time, and the journey has started. This journey is being incentivized. Srini says incentive is not required, but obviously that incentive is helping. Definitely the PLI is helping, but the incentive is in any case there even without the PLI. So that is the journey is on. Now, but if you ask me, can you achieve that overnight? You can't. You really can't. So there will be challenges to infrastructure to our country. I was a democratic nation, not like some of our neighbors. So we have to take people along, and this will take time. We have to take clearances. This will take time. Sure. So in the meantime, what can help is some of the things which our CFO colleagues have outlined. Measures of cost reduction, cost control, alternative methods of reaching the influencers, be it physicians, hospitals, and obviously the end customer, the consumers, which are the patients. It's almost as if the technology solutions have come to the forefront in such a large way, because we have probably pushed to the wall a little bit in the last year. They have become digital FTEs in their own right, very efficient and very controlled with AI, ML, you name it. And those are here to stay. And the companies are planning such that they will be enhanced further, and they will act and contribute to the bottom line of these companies. And we surely are, and we should try to become the #1 pharmacy of this world, and we are absolutely capable of doing that.
Okay. Ms. Ghosh, I wanted to ask you about this conundrum that a lot of the pharmaceuticals or every industry faces, because there is cost containment, and the pharmaceutical companies, to be fair, in the past 12 months have enjoyed that cost saving, resulting in higher margins for most of the companies. But on the other hand, you do have this issue about CapEx. You do have issues about entering into new geographies, launching new products, getting into new markets such as complex generics, APIs. So how do you balance both of those? Do you contain costs? Do you go out for growth?
Right. So in terms of cost containment and how technology can play, a differentiating role there, I'd like to, very clearly point out 5 points. The first one is in terms of balancing the supply chain. So today, we do see a lot of inefficiency that is built into the supply chain, whether it is in terms of raw material sourcing, in terms of, just understanding what my demand sources are, because that is becoming, from a deterministic nature, it is becoming stochastic. So just understanding demand, sensing the demand, and balancing the demand across the supply chain in such a way that I am not compromising on the serviceability, while I'm also ensuring that my costs are kept under control. So that requires both support of decision-making tools through analytics, and also just systems that are able to manage these transactions. That is point number 1. Point number 2, digital transformation also means upskilling of the entire employee base with the digital skills. So we are today, most of the work is being done remotely, whether it is, even inspections related to quality control, quality assurance, right? A lot of this decision making depends on data. Now, in a physical setup, when you were co-located with your colleague from the other department, you could always walk across and get that information. That is not available today. So what kind of digital skills are essential to be imparted to the entire base of employees for them to be able to do their job more efficiently? So that is another big area of productivity related cost savings. Third area is related to driving higher return from marketing spend, which a lot of, there was a very interesting discussion that was happening in terms of how can we drive higher efficiency from the commercial operations, right? So understanding influencers, understanding their buying patterns, whether it is a hospital or a doctor or any other industry influencer, and leveraging that information to further, optimize and allocate the marketing spend and the time of the field force that is going into managing all of this. So that is the third area. The fourth area is just in terms of tracking and tracing the inventory as it is flowing along the entire supply chain, right? That not only can help in optimization of the stock levels, but also in fighting the menace of drug counterfeiting. So that is the fourth area. And the final fifth area is just in terms of driving efficiency through higher automation in the manufacturing value chain. And this is very closely linked to a lot of sustainable practices, right? Whether how well are we, driving energy sustainable practices, water reuse. So Climate 21 and sustainability can be, while it is a good corporate practice, but it can also be a huge driver of savings going forward. So these are the 5 areas that we see, in terms of technology enabling differentiating cost savings for pharma companies.
Okay, all right. So that's a lot of, that's actually a very comprehensive and interesting list there. Thanks very much for that. But Kedar, I just wanted to come to you. We're talking about digital. That's the new buzzword. That's exactly what is focused on in terms of technology cost savings. There's a group of pharmaceutical companies that have come together and they've formed ABCD Technologies. And that is aimed at digital transformation as well. So give us a sense in terms of what that is, why have you all done it, and what does it mean for Indian pharmaceuticals? Are you all trying to augment yourselves to a new level of, say, digitization in the country?
Yeah, thank you for actually asking that question. See, I think the objective is pretty clear. Those of us who have been in the industry from the last several years, there has been a persistent feeling that how can I have a visibility across the value chain, right from the time I sell my product from my warehouse to the time it goes to a wholesaler, then it goes to a retailer, from the counter, sometimes there are returns and expiries. So I think the idea was to see how can we establish a very strong transparency in the data. And we have this National Digital Health Mission, which has been announced by the central government. And that also promotes digitalization. So I think to promote good distribution practices, to ensure that all these efficiencies which are today probably hidden, because of lack of appropriate data and lack of appropriate visibility across each step in the value chain, I think this is a great initiative which has been done to augment all of these initiatives. So I think 2-3 things just to sum up. One is to promote good distribution practices. Secondly, to further this National Digital Health Mission related digitalization vision in the industry, and to promote efficiencies. I would expect that once we get this data, once all the terminals are deployed across every pharmacist and retailers, I think it will provide tremendous transparency. See, today we know 60-70% of what happens to our stockists. Balance 20-30%, we don't know sometimes what happens in the hospitals, we don't have full visibility. And beyond that, in fact, the pharmacy and retail counters, which are across the nook and corners of the country, we absolutely don't have any visibility, and that leads to a lot of inefficiencies. So my hunch is this efficiency driving joint venture, if I would call it, where all the top 8 companies which have come together, once it is operational, and we have all those data and analytics available, we'll be able to do a lot of slicing and dicing, and we'll be able to extract efficiencies. I would expect, the expiries to go down. I would expect returns to go down. I would expect losses across every value chain to improve substantially. And overall, I think it will be very smooth, very agile operation that we can handle. And in my view, this is something that we were waiting for since the last several years. And I'm happy that all the industry colleagues have to come together, think on the same line, and actually execute this transaction, in quick time to get to that.
Okay. All right. Mr. Ramesh, if you had to pick out one example of the transformation that's taken place in terms of a newer business model, what the company might be implementing right now, can you give us a sense in terms of a particular example in Lupin itself?
Now, as I was saying, as with other pharma companies, we're also going through a digital transformation across the entire value chain. So let me take some examples. So we have our, our digital core, which actually comes from SAP, from a host of other embedded systems and the like. We also always had, when it comes to manufacturing, our SCADA, PLC systems, DAC systems, and the like. But today we are going on to a very different, approach. We are actually looking at digitization of a very different order, placing sensors across the various machines and gathering various, signals, so to speak, which you can see through an algorithm and do a lot more when it comes to, for example, comes to determining what is the golden batch, which helps in sieving out what is going to be the, out of specifications, out of, trend kind of batches and the like, and the reasons for that will help in better compliance. Another example for that could be potentially along the lines of predictive analytics for repairs and maintenance. You could have the same kind of information, different signals again be picked up, whereby you're able to understand, the needs of the machines, the way they talk, and how would you actually work on consumables or repairs and maintenance to bring down the overall expenditure. Another very good example could be potentially smart meters that you place along the entire value across the entire layout of factories, the equipment, and find out the usage of power, and see how we can actually bring down the overall consumption. So there's various ways of using, in fact, digital technologies to enhance your overall effectiveness, your own efficiencies, and bring down costs. That's an example when it comes to manufacturing. But you could also have examples when it comes to, in fact, the way you actually promote to doctors. Actually, we're using digital in 3 ways. One is, of course, the first is essentially looking at internal efficiencies along the entire value chain, including supply chain. The second is looking at, in fact, the touch and feel for the consumers, the channel partners, how they actually deal with you. And third is, of course, the paradigm itself, so where you could potentially have a very different paradigm, embracing various elements of the ecosystem, and providing for a very different kind of a business model for pharmaceutical companies. That's very nascent in India, but you have, in fact, examples of the entire ecosystem coming up in parts in India for sure, but in other parts of the globe, it's taking very different shapes. So things are set to change, and I think Indian pharma is also kind of adapting out there.
Okay, all right, Mr. Subramaniam. One interesting concept which I wanted to know about is more about the audits as well. Now that it's, the mobility is restricted even across countries, how exactly are customer audits taking place of sites? How exactly are, say, regulatory audits taking place? Is there a complete digital transformation which we can expect within that field? And if not, do you think that it's going to revert back to its normal physical kind of audits that used to take place earlier?
No, it's not going to be going backwards. Now people have been looking into forward in terms of integrating the companies with the next generation business intelligence forms and other things, especially when data integrity and computer controls are become one of the key issues, and with the new technologies, etc., coming. So companies will be moving forward in terms of bringing the new technologies, and also in this to thrive in this digital world, the pharma companies are expected to deploy the next generation technologies, right? We exactly do not know how it is going to shape up in the next few months to years, actually, how the regulatory audits and other things. But certainly every company is looking into the next generation. No, they are looking into the real-time transparency details in terms of the R&D, quality controls, frictionless sales and operations planning, especially when the volatility in the front end is very high. People are looking into the value chain not with respect to individual element. They're looking into from the demand forecasting to the end raw material. If you take all the companies who have been participating here, most of the front end will be foreign countries, and the key starting material will be coming in the back end mostly in China. So there is a China is there is India, then there is a foreign country. So many things are there, and this digitalization is going to help them only in terms of the uncertain, volatile environment going to prevail in the coming years. And in terms of specific to the quality control, etc., people are getting into multiple applications like LIMS and Agile and so many softwares which are there, which are getting integrated automatically to the main computer system, which must be working on or going to work, right? but this is going to take to the next level in the coming years. That is what we are feeling.
Okay. All right. Well, I just want to get some closing comments in this discussion, and I'm going to go around the entire panel to get them. My question with regards to the closing comments is that could you share what it is going to probably take to build a stronger ecosystem, say through industry, consulting partners, solution partners that can help the pharma industry as well as the patient community? So basically, what is going to help in terms of building a stronger ecosystem? And are we prepared for the next unforeseen event? Are we prepared for a possible next pandemic? I'll start with the lady first. Ms. Ghosh, you go ahead.
Thanks, Ikta. So, yeah, I mean, a great question to end the panel discussion, I would say. So we are actually, working with a lot of startups who want to, work in the area of, whether it is product development to enable a lot of the companies to move up the value chain, clinical trial management, the golden batch with Mr. Subramaniam referred to also, which brings data from so many different systems to ensure the drug that is produced on the shop floor adheres to the high standards of quality, right? So for all of this, not only are we bringing in a lot of partners who have a lot of subject matter expertise, but we are also open to partner with as many Indian pharmaceutical companies as possible to drive this forward, so that collectively we are so much stronger for the next unforeseen black swan event.
Okay, all right. Mr. Ghosh, what about you?
So before we discuss that, let's understand one thing very clearly is that, see, the pharmaceutical industry is an extremely difficult industry. I mean, so we must be very appreciative of that fact. The reason is not only because the impact it does on human health, but the principal reason for that it's incredible that we even have medicines at all, because out of the 40 trillion odd cells in a human body, only about 1,200 druggable proteins. And in this, from the history since FDA started, we're probably less than 2,000 NCEs, new molecules, and there are all with overlapping therapeutic properties, which means probably less than a couple of hundred medicines which we have around. So it's incredibly difficult principally because the target of this industry is in the human biology, for which our knowledge is probably the most primitive in terms of what we know about other industries or other applications. We probably know the least about human biology. So this is an incredibly difficult industry. Having said that, huge amounts of progress have been made through the collective wisdom of lots of scientists and lots of engineers, both in the data area, in the IT, OT, all those acronyms which we can talk about, all of those things. So it will need a huge amount of collaboration in terms of industry players. Kedar explained that, how it has started already, how it was there before. In fact, it has been there particularly in Indian pharmaceutical industry. We have been blessed with absolute top-class mandarins like Dr. Reddy's and many of those other, I would not name all of them, Mr. Hamid, for example. So the collaboration was always there. This culture of collaboration in the Indian pharmaceutical industry was always there. And I believe with the new tools in place, the new the challenges we have faced in the last 1 year has made us it is more mandatory and made it inevitable that the collaboration happens. And this is probably the only way to go forward. The only way we can gain sustainable competitive advantage, sustainable strategic advantage, and bury some of the demons of the past which we have faced. I'm not so sure that we are completely prepared to face the next black swan event, because as the name suggests, it's a black swan event. But if we stand together, all of us, and we have common vision of what ails us, what are our strengths, I believe that's the way forward. I'm happy to hear from the esteemed CFOs and supply chain heads in this panel.
Okay, I'm going to leave the CFOs for the last comment, but if I could get Mr. Rao to comment on this, what will it take to build a stronger ecosystem, and are we prepared for the next pandemic the next unforeseen event?
Well, there is one foreseen event which is actually around the corner, which is about the wave 2. Yeah. And I strongly believe, I being an optimist, what I am, that we are much better prepared than what we were for sure, because it is not a black swan, it is actually a repetition of what happened last year. Yeah.
Yes.
So digitization, collaboration, and all these things are very key and important, which all the panelists have spoken about, which will actually make us be well prepared for the next black swan event. One thing which has actually changed in the past 6 to 8 months or 1 year, I would say, is I have been in supply chain for close to 30 years. And I can tell you that, I actually come from a consumer goods industry to pharma industry. And one thing which I can tell you, that the digitization of the pharma industry, it's actually not in the top quartile, I would say, rightfully so, because we deal with the lives of the people. Yeah. And we can't actually experiment with the lives of the people. But one of the things which I would like to say here is that, as supply chain, we would love to do everything just in time. Yeah. Just in time is the mantra which actually people have taught us, the Japanese guys specifically. The Black Swan event has actually taught us just in case. What it means is basically you need to be prepared for those just in case events, the continuities and so on and so forth. That's all I would like to say.
Okay, yes, absolutely. I think that's a great phrase for everyone to take forward, just in case versus just in time. But Kedar, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, see, I think anything and everything which helps us reduce the time to develop a product, time to get an approval for a product, time to launch a product, all your processes internally, whether to produce a batch, whether to get the quality clearance, whether to dispatch to a market. So I think we need a massive movement. I think your question, Ekta, was what can the ecosystem do in terms of technology consulting, product partnering. I think we need a massive movement where all these processing times and touch times reduce dramatically, and that's what stakeholders are looking forward to, and that will improve the investment paybacks. That will give a lot of agility. That will give us a lot of courage to experiment and launch pilots and to enter into newer lines of business, newer lines of therapies, and to improve customer and patient delight. So I think we need a massive movement, as I said, where we need a high quality collaboration between technology consulting companies, product companies, and pharma companies like us, where we take it as a target to reduce time for every single activity in the value chain.
Okay, Mr.
And create superior delight.
Okay, Ramesh, what about you?
So my final thoughts are, obviously there's such thing as a sustainable competitive advantage. So we need to kind of reinvent ourselves and move from one, wave of opportunity to yet another. There's so much being said about, digitization and the opportunities that it affords us and the kind of problems that it could solve. But I think, adoption of, in fact, digital technology is not the easiest thing also. There's a lot of training that is required, a lot of onboarding in order to actually adopt the various practices on the digital way. There's, of course, issues when it comes to, in fact, knowledge retention and retention of people itself, for that matter. And of course, finally using the data that you're getting to track and analyze, and one is, of course, always consumed by too much of data at any point in time. How do you use the right kind of data to analyze things? So I think, this wave of opportunity has taught us a lot of things. How are we going to learn, use this learnings to actually tackle future crises is indeed an issue that will confront us at some point of time.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, as well as lady, thank you very much for joining in and sharing your thoughts in terms of how exactly the past 12 months have panned out and what the future of the pharmaceutical industry could be. Rajesh, it's over to you.
Hey, Ekta and the panel, thank you so much for a great and engaging discussion. I can't thank enough each of the panelists, Mr. Subramanian, Mr. Deshpande, Mr. Rao, Mr. Upadhyay, Mr. Swaminathan, and of course, our partner, Mr. Joydeep Ghosh, who has been a partner in crime with us for many of the opportunities and engagements that we have run with clients, and my own colleague, Sulakshna. Thanks so much for an engaging discussion. of course, Mr. Shirish Belapuri set the tone with an engaging keynote address. So Shirish, thanks as always, for being a guide and mentor to us. This is a great initiative that we hope to make a difference in the industry, and your constant guidance, starting with what we heard from you today, will always be a great help in this endeavor. This event would not have been successful without the active participation of a lot of the members from the audience. Thanks so much for all the questions. We have tried to answer some of them over chat. For those that we could not get to, we will see how best we can respond to that. We look forward to continuous participation in our future events as well. And also, we are looking for opportunities where we believe that there is common interest in terms of looking at programs which can be innovation driven, which may not have a solution which is defined at the beginning, but we may have to co-innovate to address a particular problem. We are more than happy to make that difference, and we look forward to your support for that as well. So thanks everyone for a great start, and we look forward to more such confluences, more such meetings, as well as more engagements which are outside of these conferences or meetings, wherein, as I said, we are talking about innovation, we are talking about specific engagements. It can be point engagements, it can be larger opportunities where we collaborate on. So it's a great start, and we appreciate it. And thanks all once again.